Have you ever heard of Curacao, a hidden gem in the Caribbean with a dark secret? Nestled in the azure waters of the Caribbean Sea, Curacao is a paradise with its pristine white beaches, vibrant coral reefs, and a rich cultural heritage that is as warm and inviting as the tropical sun itself. However, beneath this idyllic facade lies a stark contrast, a shadowy underbelly of drugs and violence that belies the island's natural allure. Curacao, this paradisiacal island, is also a battleground, a theatre of war against drug trafficking and crime. It's a paradoxical world where the tranquil lullaby of the sea clashes with the harsh discordance of gunfire. But to truly understand this contrast, to fathom the depths of this paradox, we must delve into the past, into the roots of these issues. Now, we shall take a journey through time, uncovering the progression of drugs and violence in this paradise. Our story begins in the late 20th century, a time of innocence for Curacao. Imagine Curacao during the 1970s and 1980s, a tropical paradise nestled in the southern Caribbean Sea, a place of vibrant culture, picturesque landscapes, and an easygoing lifestyle. But beneath the surface of this idyllic setting, a darker narrative was beginning to take shape. In the late 1970s, Curacao, much like the rest of the world, was introduced to the drug trade. Initially, it was a small-scale operation, a side hustle for some, an easy way to make a quick buck. But as demand grew, so did the business. By the dawn of the 1980s, what started as a trickle had turned into a torrent, sweeping through the island like a tempestuous wave. And with the drugs came violence. The tranquil island life was disrupted by the emergence of drug-related crime, a phenomenon previously unknown to the islanders. The streets that once echoed with the harmonious rhythms of the tambour drum now reverberated with the discordant sounds of fear and uncertainty. As the 1980s unfolded, the situation worsened. The drug trade became more organized, more potent. Turf wars broke out between rival factions, each vying for control of the lucrative market. The violence escalated, and the island's innocence was lost, replaced by a shadow that threatened to engulf its future. Meanwhile, the authorities seemed helpless, unable to stem the rising tide. The justice system, unprepared for this new breed of crime, struggled to keep pace. The paradise was slowly turning into a battleground, and the islanders found themselves caught in the crossfire. Yet, throughout this turmoil, the spirit of Curacao remained unbroken. The people clung to their traditions, their culture, their music, their way of life. They refused to let the shadow define them, even as it threatened to consume them. And so, as the 1980s gave way to the 90s, a new chapter was about to begin. A chapter marked by resilience and resistance. As time passed, this situation started to escalate, turning the paradise into a battleground. As the millennium turned, so did the fate of Curacao. A time of celebration and anticipation for many, the dawn of the 21st century marked a significant and sinister shift for this tropical paradise. A surge in drug trafficking and violence began to cast long, ominous shadows across the island, turning the idyllic image of Curacao into a stark contrast of its reality. The early years of the new century saw the island becoming an increasingly popular transit point for drug cartels. The narcotics, primarily cocaine, were shipped from South America, destined for the United States and Europe. The tranquil beaches and the serene waters of Curacao were no longer just a tourist dream. They were now part of a nightmare that was slowly beginning to unfold. As the drug trade flourished, so did violence. The streets of Curacao, once known for their vibrant colors and the laughter of its people, were now becoming the backdrop for a much darker narrative. Gang violence escalated, and the island began to see a sharp increase in homicides. The peace and tranquility that had once defined Curacao were being replaced by fear and uncertainty. The impact of this surge in drug trafficking and violence was profound and far-reaching. The fabric of the island society began to tear at the seams. Families were torn apart, communities were ravaged, and a sense of despair permeated the air. The Paradise Island was losing its luster, its people were losing their smiles, and the world was slowly losing a gem in the Caribbean. But amidst the chaos and the turmoil, the spirit of the islanders remained unbroken. They knew that this was a battle they had to fight, a darkness they had to overcome. They understood that this was a turning point in their history, a moment that would define their future. This was not the end. Instead, it was just the beginning of a dark era. The 2010 S, a decade of despair for Curacao as the island was drowning in drugs and violence. The years that spanned the second decade of the 21st century were, without a doubt, some of the darkest for the beautiful island of Curacao. The picturesque beaches and vibrant culture were overshadowed by a growing menace, a rising tide of drugs and violence that seemed unstoppable. During these years, Curacao was caught in the stranglehold of a drug epidemic that permeated every corner of the island. The streets were awash with illegal substances, from cocaine to marijuana, turning vibrant communities into battlegrounds. The drug trade was no longer a hidden undercurrent, but a rampant force, leaving in its wake a trail of destruction. One particular incident that stands out from this era was the infamous Hato massacre of 2012. On a sunny afternoon, a group of heavily armed men stormed the Hato airport, leaving 6 people dead and several others wounded. It was a brazen display of violence that shook the island to its core, a chilling reminder of the depth of the problem Curacao was facing. The impact of these escalating drug-related incidents was profound. Families were torn apart, communities were ravaged, and the island's reputation as a peaceful paradise was irreversibly tarnished. The sense of safety and tranquility that once defined Curacao seemed to have evaporated, replaced by fear and uncertainty. But the violence was not just limited to the streets. It infiltrated homes, schools, and workplaces, creating a climate of constant fear. Children were growing up witnessing atrocities they should never have been exposed to. The island's youth were being lured into the drug trade, their futures hanging in the balance. Yet amidst the turmoil, there was a glimmer of hope. A group of brave individuals, community leaders, and organizations started to rise against the tide. They began to challenge the status quo, to fight back against the drug cartels and their reign of terror. They sought to reclaim their island, to restore peace and security. Despite the despair, there were those who sought to bring change. In the midst of darkness, there's always a glimmer of hope. In the ongoing struggle against the shadows of drugs and violence in Curacao, it is this glimmer of hope that fuels the relentless efforts of individuals, organizations, and the government. The fight is far from simple. It's a complex dance of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But every step, no matter how small, is a stride towards a brighter future. Individuals, often those whose lives have been directly impacted by the scourge of drugs and violence, have been stepping up to make a difference. They've become beacons of change, bravely sharing their personal stories to educate others, offering support to those in need, and actively working to break the cycle of addiction and violence. Non-profit organizations and charities have also stepped into the fray, providing much-needed resources and support to those affected. They work tirelessly to offer rehabilitation programs, counseling services, and educational initiatives, all aimed at addressing the root causes of the issue and paving the way for recovery and reintegration. The government, recognizing the gravity of the situation, has been implementing stringent measures to combat the drug trade and violence. They've ramped up law enforcement efforts, enacted tougher laws, and introduced comprehensive social programs designed to provide alternatives to a life in the shadows. These collective efforts have led to some promising results. The rate of drug-related crimes has seen a gradual decrease, and there's been a surge in the number of individuals seeking help for addiction. But it's important to remember that these victories are merely milestones in a marathon, not the finish line. However, these signs of progress serve as a testament to the power of collective action and the indomitable spirit of the people of Curacao. They remind us that change, while often slow, is possible. They reiterate that every effort, no matter how small, contributes to the larger battle against the shadows. The fight isn't over. In fact, it's only just begun. But as long as there are those willing to step into the darkness to seek out that glimmer of hope, the shadows will never win. Fast forward to today, where does Curacao stand in its battle against drugs and violence? In the here and now, Curacao grapples with the persistent shadows of drugs and violence. The island, known for its vibrant culture and breathtaking landscapes, continues to be a stage where this fierce battle unfolds. Recent developments have painted a picture that is as complex as it is concerning. Drugs continue to seep into the fabric of society, their influence reaching far and wide, from the bustling capital of Willemstad to the quietest corners of the island. The illicit trade, primarily of cocaine, remains a significant issue, with Curacao serving as a transit point between South America and Europe. The impact is twofold. Not only is the island's reputation tarnished on the global stage, but the local community also bears the brunt of the fallout. Violence, often intertwined with the drug trade, persists as a grim reality. Despite concerted efforts by law enforcement and community organizations, incidents of violence, particularly gun-related, show a stubborn resilience. Each act of violence sends ripples through the community, leaving a trail of grief and fear. Yet amidst this daunting scenario, there are glimmers of hope. Ongoing efforts to combat these twin menaces are gaining momentum. Law enforcement agencies, backed by international cooperation, are ramping up their efforts to disrupt the drug trade and curb violence. Educational initiatives are being rolled out, targeting the island's youth with the aim of preventing them from falling into the drug trap. Community outreach programs are working tirelessly to heal the wounds inflicted by violence and to rebuild the social fabric. Despite the challenges, the spirit of Curacao remains undeterred. The islanders, resilient as ever, are standing their ground against these shadows, determined to reclaim their paradise. The battle is far from over, but the will to fight is unwavering. While the battle rages on, there's a role for everyone to play. Now that you know the shadows that lurk in paradise, what can you do to help? It might seem like a mammoth task, facing these long-standing issues of drug abuse and violence in Curacao. But remember, every bit of effort contributes to a larger movement of change. You might be wondering, how can I, an individual, make a difference? Let's delve into that. First and foremost, educating oneself is the stepping stone to creating a ripple of change. Inform yourself about the history, the root causes, and the far-reaching implications of these societal issues. Read up, attend seminars, participate in discussions. Knowledge is a powerful tool, and the more you understand, the better equipped you are to spread the word and dismantle misconceptions. Next, advocacy. Use your voice to raise awareness. This could be as simple as having a conversation with a friend, or as broad as using your social media platforms to reach a wider audience. Share what you've learned, encourage open dialogues, and challenge the stigma and stereotypes that often surround drug abuse and violence. Support is another crucial element. There are numerous organizations working relentlessly on the ground in Curacao, striving to tackle these issues. They provide resources, rehabilitation, and preventive measures, but they need your help to continue their invaluable work. Donating, volunteering your time, or even sharing their initiatives can make a significant impact. Another way to contribute is by advocating for policy changes. Reach out to your local and national representatives, urging them to prioritize initiatives that tackle the root causes of these issues, like poverty and lack of education. Remember, change doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow process, often filled with challenges and setbacks. But don't let that deter you. Every conversation, every shared post, every dollar donated is a step in the right direction. Remember, every action counts in the fight against drugs and violence. Together we can bring the light back to Curacao.